gentlemen, I am Matt Camp, and this is the Wrestling Matt. How you doing today? It's a Thursday. Good morning to you, to the Matt members out there that are joining me live at 11 a.m. Eastern. Hello, good morning to you out there. And if you're watching after the fact, you're watching at 5 p.m. Eastern because you are subscribed to the WrestlingMatchShow.com so you don't miss anything, or you are listening wherever you get your podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe there as well. Certainly helps us. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Was that a Skype sound? What year is this? What's going on? You don't want to, it's 2024. We're not going backwards. Wait. Oh, maybe we are in some ways. I got a Blue Sky locked in. I had a whole conversation about Blue Sky last night with some very smart people for my Wednesday night activities. So, yeah, I'm on Blue Sky now. You can look. I'll put the link up later. I was told it is picking up followers at quite the rate, and a lot of people are going to make their presence felt there. I will tell you this. When I first signed up for Blue Sky, and I don't know how the hell I got on this, but I'm going to tell you this because I've been on Twitter since 2009. So, yeah, 15-plus years of Twitter for me. If you signed up for Blue Sky, wasn't there some threat last year? I'm like, all right, Twitter's done, and everybody's writing their last tweet. I think I did one, too. And remember I signed up for Blue Sky. I was like, it was a little too Discord-y for me, and I don't even know if I'm even saying that right or describing it right. But I went back, and it is so much better. So many more features and I have no affiliation to Blue Sky whatsoever. I'm just saying, everything that you may have used to love about Twitter seems to exist in Blue Sky. And my good friend, my former coworker, my former radio co-host, Big Game Joe Dolan, who you can now catch on the Ross Tucker Fantasy Feast podcast. He still hosts Sirius XM Fantasy Football Game Day with Paul Kelly, and he's kicking ass at fantasy points. He informed me, I think I saw him posted somewhere, that they have a pretty good tweet deck option for those of you that used that in the past. So I will be exploring that a lot more. And yes, I was at Dynamite last night. Not to bury the lead, but I had some conversations with people last night at the show about how that app has really taken off in the last week. And another time was when I guess Twitter got rid of the block button. So, yeah, I have always been a big believer in at least exploring new social media. And anybody out there who's got the same handle across the board, it's good to at least sign up for it so you at least hold your own handle. But I expect to see a lot more people on there. So anyway, I see what the caption says. Hello, nerdy dude. He says, hey, Matt, I hope you are doing well. Nerdy dude, hope you are also doing well. How is Dynamite? Because that's the title of this episode. I went to AEW Dynamite. I've now gone to 3 AEW shows. All have been very easy drives for me. I went to the UBS Arena, where the Icelanders play, for Forbidden Door, which I didn't talk about until after, and obviously it got reported, whatever. I went to Grand Slam, another easy drive for me. And last night, I took a 8-minute drive to Dynamite in lovely Bridgeport, Connecticut. Unless you asked some of the people on the show last night who thought they were in Stamford. And believe me, they were not. Stamford is this weird business town with Jerry Springer's studio and this weird ghost of Vince. I know he's not dead, but you know what I mean. These financial institutions that moved out of there. It's the city that works. That's the name of it. And then Bridgeport is I'm going to tell you a quick story. If you go one exit or two exits past the arena where the show was held last night, which there's two venues right there. One's for music, and the one they were in last night, a little bit bigger, can hold a lot of people. And minor league, once again, the minor league Islanders team plays there from NHL, of course. And if you go a couple exits more down, there is a Bass Pro Shops. Which, if you know Bridgeport, it really doesn't fit Bridgeport. But there's a Bass Pro Shops there, and connected to that Bass Pro Shops is Uncle Buck's Bar Bowling something. Not that Uncle Buck, not John Candy, not you should have seen the toast. We couldn't even get it through the door. Not that one. I wish. But there is a bar connected to this Bass Pro Shop. Yes, B-May, what's up to you? Shout out to Bass Pro. And in this bar, they have their own beer and somewhere in the range of like 8 to 10 bowling lanes. You can bowl there. Is that what they call it? I know this. It's a bowling alley, basically, with like 8 or 10 lanes. Yeah, I know what the fuck I'm talking about. Jesus. And it's like painted like it's underwater. So you can literally, it connects to this Bass Pro. Why do I know all this? Because years ago, before I made any kind of career in professional wrestling, I was the lead fantasy football analyst for Bleacher Report. And I don't remember what year it was, maybe my second or third year. We signed a deal with Bass Pro Shops, and they sponsored my fantasy football stuff. And that included a trip to the Bass Pro Shops in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I did a live show. There's a tank there with fish in it. I put all kinds of ridiculous clothes on in the name of having fun for fantasy football. And then a year later, I think it was the next year, we continued our partnership with Bass Pro Shops, and I did 4 remotes. Actually, I think now the year before, as I think about it, we did 2. We did one at the Bass Pro Shop in Bridgeport, and we did one right outside at Patriot Place, where the Patriots play. There's a Bass Pro Shop there. They have the big tank. That's what I was thinking of. But then the following year, we continued with the partnership, and I did 4 remotes, 4 live hits. Hamburg, Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, back to Foxborough, Massachusetts, and Bridgeport. B-May says, you tell me you didn't get the hat. I have some hats. I have the hat. I had a bunch of different colors of it because it also decorated our New York set because they also sponsored shows that we didn't do on location. But anyway, it was kind of weird and kind of fun. Like I said, I don't live that far away from the arena or that Bass Pro Shop or obviously my former employer. And I was driving. I went, oh, my God, the Bass Pro is like 1 exit away. And I pass it all the time. But it was, kind of wild that I was back there last night in a way. And I appreciate how I'm welcome there. I had great conversations with some former coworkers, who I am genuinely happy to see succeeding in various roles at AEW. It is a different atmosphere than WWE. While you see plenty of people that have worked for both places, You see the bones of what a wrestling backstage is. You know, pretty similar in that way. You kind of find where you got to go. And, I think some people have seen some like backstage shine, stuff like that. It's like anything else. And they're super nice to me there and always have been from the top down. And I always appreciated that. I appreciated it last night. So I got to take in the show. I watched it, and I like to do this. I like to watch the show from multiple places. Now, I think you could figure out. I do have access. I'm not hiding that. I'm allowed to kind of roam. I don't take advantage of the access that they give me, but I'm allowed to just roam. So I like to watch the show from the floor, from the hard camera side. I like to watch it from different angles. I like to watch it up close. I like to look around the crowd. Because I say this all the time, right? I try to look at wrestling from three perspectives. I look at it as a fan. Big reason I went last night. I look at it as an analyst who's talking to you right now. And then I look at it if I was in the whole thing. And I like to see what's connecting with people. I like to see whose promos are connecting. I also like to see when things I think aren't working are working. I've talked about that plenty. About, WWE. I haven't been really in on the whole Liv Rhea thing. And I got yelled at about that in the comments section. Oh, go check the numbers. Every single time I make a point to say, hey, it's not my thing, I always follow it up with, but I know they do 1 million views on those YouTube hits. I know that's clicking. I know that's working. So the criticism is just because sometimes it's personal preference. Sometimes I believe it's constructive, and I go, hey, I would do this instead of that. I had the whole conversation, and a lot of you agreed with me in the comments, and I appreciate that women's War Games match didn't get a lot of care, was pretty slapped together, and is not indicative of the booking we know is WWE can be capable of, as we have seen, especially the last 2 weeks, but for a pretty long time now, in NXT. So I appreciated that a lot of you understood that. Some pushback. But I had someone get mad at me that I was like, well, the Liv stuff's doing well. It is. That's the difference between criticism and me being able to go, hey, they could have done this instead of that. I'm not trying to pick apart the Liv, Rhea, all that stuff angle. It's just not for me. And that is like anything else. Flavors of ice cream. He wasn't the first person to ever say this, but I had a conversation with Christopher Daniels years ago. I want to say 2015. It was the month before AJ Styles debuted in WWE because it was an article I wrote. I think I've mentioned this before. It's out there in the world. I wrote an article. God, and there are so many hints of AEW in this article without even me knowing. But I wrote an article. I went to Final Battle in Philadelphia. I think AJ wrestled Adam Cole on that show. AJ would then, for those that don't remember, if you don't, that time period, there was a rumor AJ had a back injury. And I think it was, he doesn't like to talk about that stuff. He doesn't like to put that out in the world. There's some pride in that. I get that. And, nobody, and I remember asking him, hey, anything? Nah, I'm all right. Don't worry about it. And he wrestled Adam Cole that night. He wrestled Shinsuke Nakamura a few weeks later on January 4th at Wrestle Kingdom. And then later that month, he debuted properly in WWE at the Royal Rumble. And I framed the article basically around the idea that although AJ Styles was finally getting to WWE, and that was a big deal, but it was more of, man, I never thought this would happen. And a big reason why I never thought, and a lot of people never thought AJ was going to get to WWE and stay, was initially, well, he's, quote, smaller guy, and he's an indie guy, and he worked at TNA, and he worked at Ring of Honor. But the bigger part then after that came when he went to Japan. And they booked him, as he has talked about in the last, 6 to 10 months. They booked him like an absolute crusher. They booked him like this super heel gaijin. And it worked. And listen, if you're going to put the rocket behind up on AJ Styles, he's going to ride it to the top. And he did. And I think he had done so well in Japan that I was like, wow, he's good. But at the same time, there was buzz getting created. And I remember that right around that time, WWE acknowledged the conversations being had with AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, and Shinsuke Nakamura, which was kind of wild. And I remember I did a video for Bleacher Report on the time. It was almost kind of breaking news, and wow, they're actually covering this. And then, AJ showed up, and the Good Brothers showed up, and Shinsuke showed up. All of that ended up happening. A quick side note, maybe this will grab people's interest. I have heard on multiple occasions that there was a deal for AJ, Gallows, and Anderson to go back to TNA. I had heard that. I'd even heard it was agreed to, or some kind of understanding. We know what happened. But I had heard that Anderson and Gallows were going to show up in TNA. Because you remember the big write-off AJ with all this and all, which I believe he has talked about it on his podcast. I believe that's the last thing Jeff Jarrett had ever produced for TNA. Anyway, I was writing this article with the idea being WWE is no longer a necessary final destination for those making a career in pro wrestling because other avenues have been opened up. And I wrote the article and had the idea before we knew AJ was going to WWE. I wrote the article to talk about the journeys of the people I interviewed who either didn't go to WWE, weren't going to WWE, or were very happy to be in Ring of Honor / New Japan or PWG, whatever they were doing. In that interview, I interviewed the Young Bucks. I interviewed Frankie Kazarian. I interviewed Christopher Daniels. I interviewed Kyle O'Reilly. I interviewed Adam Cole. Did I miss anybody? And I interviewed AJ Styles. There might have been one more. But the conversation, and I'm glad if you can tell, that's quite a wide swath of talent. Christopher Daniels is one of like the original indie standout guys. So he had seen it all. I had known him and Frankie Kazarian. I used to be, and I'm not to say I'm not, but, Frankie and I used to talk pretty regularly about football. And he's a big Rams fan, and we hit it off when I was around TNA a lot. And he has seen a lot. God, look at his career. TNA, Velocity, WWE, back to TNA, Ring of Honor, AEW, back to TNA. He's reinvented himself now. Frankie's made a hell of a career for himself. as did Christopher Daniels. This was at a time, though, because we're 3 years pretty much before the start of AEW, or that's not in play, as far as I know. But it was talking, I asked the Young Bucks about, their role in carving this path for wrestlers to not have to go to WWE and make a great living. Not just get by, not be happy to do something they love for a living, but make a lot of money. And we talked about pro wrestling tees. We talked about getting shirts and, I guess, Hot Topic. And I compared what they did and being able to have these deals where they could go work Ring of Honor, New Japan, and PWG. I said, what you guys have done, and they gave a lot of credit to Hall and Nash. That was that domino of a guaranteed contract. When that fell in 1996, that changed the game. And they look at those guys. And at that time, 9 years ago, whatever it was, 8 years ago, they told me, those guys set the standard. We know what they did. We know how they changed the business for the better to get people paid. Guarantee, we were hoping, that this would lead to similar things, that this would change the game, that this would make for a better industry for everybody. And they did that. Booking, this is not about a creative. This is not about Matthew and Nicholas Jackson. This is about those two guys. They did pave the way for a different path to wrestling superstardom and nice bank accounts. Nice, reliable bank accounts. They did it. They had to kind of go out there and do it first. And the Colt Cabanas of the world and the Young Bucks of the world who kind of figured it out. Hey, if the big place doesn't want me, the big place at the time, obviously now there's two, I got to go figure out another way to do this. I got to go hustle. And I think it goes a long way to say that meet and greets, playing to your fans, acknowledging your fans, thanking your fans, they were creating fans by being accessible the way they were. They knew they needed to create those fans to have a real movement. They had that movement. Cody got into that mix. Hangman was in that mix. They figured that out. And they were happy that WWE didn't have to be the end. And I know they had conversations with WWE before AEW started in 2019. I don't know how that would have gone. I don't have a lot of faith. I didn't really have much faith at all in WWE knowing anything to do with Kenny Omega. And tag team wrestling is what it is in WWE. So they went out and did their own thing. But the origins of what AEW is, came from that mindset. The origins came from what I was getting to here with Christopher Daniels saying, hey, there's a lot of flavors of ice cream. And this was a time, 8-9, when more and more stuff was now accessible. We had the WWE Network. You had New Japan World. You had more indie streaming. You had more ways to get older stuff on YouTube and all of that. And, Daniels talked about these. I used to do indie shows and no one would ever see them. Now you do a show, it's kind of a surprise to not be on the internet somewhere. You can go find what you like in pro wrestling. And that's my whole thing with the, Liv and Rhea thing. It's not for me, but it's for a lot of people, and I get that. And it's making that company money, and it's made Liv and Dom and Rhea a bunch of money, and I'm glad for them. And they're going to do it that way. And people are into it, they follow it, and they like it, and that's good. It's not for me. Not everything on every show is for me. You might like it, though, and that's great. A lot of people do. Okay, cool. It's a Dynamite lesson. I don't even know why I went there. Let me catch up on some of these. Nerdy, I'll come back to that machine guns question. I'll do it now. Question not AW related. What do you think of the booking of the Motor City Machine Guns in WWE so far? Excellent. I would honestly throw them in the conversation with AJ Styles. And I'm like, wow, didn't ever think they'd make it here. And then they did. And the vignettes were fine. There was nothing special about them. But as I said, you, at least in terms of tag team wrestling, don't think it's possible to put a team over more in 2 weeks than they've done with the Motor City Machine Guns. Win in their debut, come back the next week, win again to get a title shot, and immediately take that match, beat the Bloodline, be in the mix in your second week in the company with the biggest story in the company, and you don't completely get overshadowed by it. You still get your moments. Pretty damn good so far. I hope it's not the peak. I would love them to buck the trend of how tag team wrestling has been presented in WWE for quite some time. I hope they buck that trend because, God, they're good. Tell you a little story real quick before we get back to Dynamite. A couple of years ago, the Dusty Classic, they brought in Alex Shelley to team with Kushida. Now, I don't think I've talked about it very often. Oh, you can't see it, can you? I can't get it now. It's probably the only, it's not even visible, but there is a Kushida Mattel up there. It's in the corner. Blocks out the window. I am a massive Kushida fan. One of my favorite guys when I first started watching New Japan on a regular basis. The amount of times I complained that he was not allowed to wrestle heavyweights, which is now more of a thing in New Japan. And then I ended up working the same company. Never really talked to Kushida, but I was so hyped to be able to, here's my third role, as a part of the show. Holy hell, I get to talk about the Time Splitters. I get to talk about Alex Shelley and Kushida. And I didn't know the plans. I wasn't privy to those plans or how far they were going to go, if Shelley was going to stick around. And unfortunately, he didn't. But I remember getting told, don't say Time Splitters. We don't own it. WWE, don't say it. I don't know if anybody ever copyrighted that. But it was enough for me to go, oh, Kushida and Alex Shelley, let's go. And I kind of thought Shelley would stick around as a coach. And now he's on SmackDown and he's a tag team champion. God, is he good. I was around for Saban's world title stuff in TNA and you know, all the great stuff the Machine Guns did. I will tell you one thing, and I know he brings it up and brought it up plenty of. Go watch what the Dudleys did go watch what Team 3D did, in TNA for the Machine Guns. They kicked out of the 3D. I know that's probably not as big of a deal in this day and age, but that was an extremely protected finisher, as it should be, and they got to kick out of it. And that beat the Dudleys. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong. Did they end the Dudleys as a team? I thought they did. I might be wrong. You guys can correct me live or later on. But so far, so good for the Machine Guns. There's a lot of situations where people don't like how an angle starts, and they say, let it play out. Give it time. You can also say that when someone starts off really well, even though his history says tag teams don't get that kind of push. So far, so good. Happy for the Machine Guns. B-May. Frankie's wrestling my hometown this weekend. Had a pleasure meeting him a couple times. He's a great guy. He is one of The only people, and I'm not saying everybody has to do this, but I remember I hadn't seen him in a while. And I will tell you this, a big reason why it's different now because I've done the business and all that stuff. But a big reason at the beginning why I was able to kind of work my way into the wrestling industry, obviously I networked and made friends and all that stuff. But a big reason was because I just kind of blended in. I didn't ask for pictures. I didn't ask for autographs. I've never been that way. It was more, hey, someone is willing to give me access to this show because there's a trust there that I'm not going to take advantage of that access. I am going to keep the locker room a safe haven. So no one's worried about me when they see me because there is some protection there. Some wrestling fans go a little too far, or they can't turn down the fandom. And listen, wrestlers are very happy that fans buy tickets, merch, whatever, all that stuff. But you do need a break sometimes, and that's okay. And when you're backstage, your guard's probably down a little bit more because they're out there, you're behind the scenes. And why? Because, whoever you're working with, you're probably walking around talking about the match. They don't need to see that stuff. So I had, properly found my way into locker rooms and didn't bother. Hey, I'll have conversations. A lot of people like to talk football. If I got to a point where I felt comfortable talking wrestling or whatever they did, we got there. And Frankie was one of those guys. I connected with Frankie through fantasy football. I played in leagues with him. He came on the radio. Big Rams fan. That's how we connected. And I hadn't seen him for a couple of years, and I saw him at a House of Hardcore show. I wasn't working it yet. I was just there. And he's like, hey, we got to get a picture. So I have a picture on my phone somewhere that Frankie wanted to make sure he took with me. And I always appreciated that about our friendship at the time. It was like, hey, you're my friend. This is not about me being a wrestler or famous. And I always like that. So I'll always be a Frankie Kazarian fan, and I'm happy to see him still kicking ass in TNA. Did I catch up here? All right, so Dynamite last night. So I have to go through the whole show. The arena had one level. There was no real upper deck. There were kind of suites and stuff around the top. And everything you could pretty much see on camera was there. I was out in the crowd before the show, and people were pumped to be there. People were excited to be there. You could tell. They have their own kind of, I guess what you'd call it, some kind of premium meet and greet where you can stand on the ramp with an AEW championship. They had a lot of people doing that, which is a cool experience. They had a lot of people doing that, yeah. I got to tell you, I've never walked out of a tunnel and down a ramp. Even in the 5 years I was in, I never did that. I actually didn't feel right doing that. I walked through the tunnel. I never walked through Gorilla down the ramp. I didn't take a picture on the ramp at WrestleMania. I didn't go through the Raw or never. I think I don't even know. I don't think I ever walked into Gorilla in Raw or SmackDown. I did it in NXT because it's more wide open. And AEW has an area of Gorilla, like everybody does. But it is to have that experience of standing on the ramp and looking into the crowd, looking into the seats, and I think that's a pretty cool way to do that kind of stuff. So that's how they got things going. You could feel the excitement. The opening match, the opening segment was a match, and you put four guys who always make the most of their TV time, Jay White and Juice versus Christian and Hangman. I tweeted it last night. Despite everything he's done. And I will say, take the regional area of the crowd into consideration when you think about the reactions last night, and that includes Hangman. It's a crowd that, similar to what a New York crowd used to be, similar to what a Philly crowd can be. If you're good at your job and people like you, regardless of babyface heel, they might cheer. It might not go with what they want on the show. It happened later on. I'll get to that. People still love Hangman. As I said yesterday, another awesome piece of music. But I think people want to like him because that's their guy. And we're not close to that, but all I would say is it feels like we'll be able to get back there someday. Just 4 great pros. I think Juice Robinson's doing great work and has been for a while. Jay and Hangman again at the pay-per-view should be good. Look, the heels cheated. They won. Hangman got the win on Juice with the Deadeye, with the interference and all that stuff. You got Hook involved, which was, kind of a good swerve because Hook gets involved and gets Nick Wayne out of there. So you're going, oh, no, but they were able to work their way back around, and you have Kip in the group. They win. Big segment backstage with Renee and Mercedes and Camille and the spear through the wall. They tried to run it over last week, so sure, go for it. That got a big reaction in the crowd. I don't know if people were upset that Mercedes didn't make a live appearance, but that got a big reaction from the crowd. The Ospreay Kyle Fletcher segment. First of all, Tony Schiavone is a beloved human being. When he stepped into that ring, people were shouting out belated happy birthday. There's a lovability to Tony Schiavone, and that was apparent again last night. We get the Kyle and Will thing. No Callis. No Callis all night, I believe. Which I think, while I have enjoyed what they've done with Callis and Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher and Archer and Brian Cage, kind of reshaping the Don Callis family, I thought it was good last night to have him out of the mix and make it about the personal issues. A friendship, a deep, close friendship that blew up because Kyle Fletcher decided to side with Don Callis over Will Ospreay. I love that Will, Ospreay was like, hey, somebody's going to come out. I know what's going on. I've been in these meetings, which I liked. I love that a babyface was like, hey, I know how this works. I was on that side, as opposed to, oh, I can't believe someone came out to. Yeah, I was in the family. I know how you guys plan. I did that too. I'm not dumb. You're not by yourself. So Kyle flips him the screwdriver. And Will immediately takes it and fires it to the outside. And in a beautiful bit of happenstance, similar to Roman catching the microphone when Brock was on the tractor at SummerSlam a couple of years ago, it sticks in the mat. And shout out to the camera guy because he sees it and then gets right in on it. And it was a cool, lucky visual. I know Will reposted it on his social today. But then they got serious. They told real stories. They told the story of Will letting Kyle know, you lived in my house. I got you in here. You picked up my kid from school with me. And Kyle played the right heel. Yeah, he did that stuff, but you made it about you. You kept me under your wing. No, he didn't. But that's the heel way of approaching things. They get their match set up. Will treats it as, hey, I'm giving you that spotlight. Set it all up. Here comes Archer. Here comes Brian Cage. But Mark Davis and Hobbs come out. By the way, Hobbs looks like $1 million. But that leads right into Roddy coming out. We go to our Falls Count Anywhere match. Lance Archer, Roderick Strong. Crowd loved this. I haven't watched it back. I don't know how well the crowd came across on television. I didn't pay a ton of attention to Twitter while I was there, but they fought in places. They got in the way. Like, it was two guys who knew what they were doing. What a different. You want to talk about styles making fights? That's what we got last night from Archer and Roddy. Two very different kind of guys, but willing to go. Good stuff. You got, Taven involved and all that, and Roddy won, so he gets the 3. And they showed MJF watching from his home, where he has graciously allowed cameras to see him snide and snivel, because that's what MJF does. And he calls out, Max, MJF, I got you now. Well, okay, hold on a second. Your buddy Adam Cole's got to wrestle Takeshita. A lot of people, I know a lot of people went through a lot of thinking about this match. Great match on paper. One of these guys is going to lose? They can't lose yet. Why are they doing this match now? But I'm excited for it because it's going to be a great match. Sure. And Takeshita comes out, takes out Roddy. Here comes Adam Cole, and we're off and running. Really good. Don't think they emptied the tank. I'm happy they didn't because I want to see them do it again. But I want to point something out. I say this for certain people, not everybody. Your social media can be currency if used correctly, where you don't do too much, where your posts matter more. And this is more of a Twitter thing because you don't tweet that often or tweet about everything or what when you speak, it's not often, so people pay attention more. MJF put out a tweet about his ring getting stolen the night before he lost to Ospreay. And I remember I pointed it out. And I said, he doesn't tweet for no reason. And what happened? Garcia shows up. And he's got the ring. And the story is he, stole it and pawned it, whatever. And I went, MJF tweeted for a reason. So, let's fast forward to this week. Because sometimes the answer is right there for you. Yesterday, MJF quote tweets the post about Cole and Takeshita, the match. And MJF says, I wrestled Takeshita in one of the greatest Dynamite matches of all time. He's an incredible professional wrestler with fierce athleticism and blinding speed. Plus, I gave Don Callis my Dynamite diamond ring. Adam Cole is an anthropomorphic yellow mop. Case dismissed. And what was the finish of the match? And you go, well, of course he's going to use the ring. Yeah, but he literally just said, he told you. He's got my ring. And that was the difference. So Adam Cole takes an L in his third match back. With the ring, Takeshita doesn't lose 2 weeks in a row. And Takeshita, now has a pretty big win under his belt, regardless of how he got it over Adam Cole. And that means Max and Roddy at Full Gear, not Adam Cole. Roddy gets back in there. Takeshita takes him out, which I also liked And I realized that Roddy had already been through a match and he already had gotten attacked by Takeshita. But I liked the presentation of just how much of a badass Takeshita can be that he was able to take Roddy out to. Sure, he took Cole down with the ring, but you had him take two people out, and then Kyle O'Reilly comes out for the save. Takeshita bails. Ricochet's waiting for him. You tie that back together. Kyle's like, nope, no thanks. Do you want to see them back together? Do you want to see them be loose allies? Kyle's with, the conglomeration. It's got nothing to do with Adam. It's got nothing to do with nothing to do with Roddy. They might be better as loose allies, but I want them to kind of explore their own ways. Hurt Syndicate came out. Hurt Syndicate, interviewed by Renee, blah, 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 blah. He takes over. I'll hurt him. We'll make an example. There we go. I'll get back to them in a bit. The segment with Moxley and the Death Riders and Orange and all that, pretty basic back and forth. I love that Orange reminded Mox that he beat him. It's funny, I was looking through some clips today of old stuff, and I saw the video where I talked about how I wasn't allowed to say that John Cena and Roman Reigns had a match years prior to Cena's comeback at SummerSlam. I wasn't allowed to bring up the old match. Whereas here, in this story, Orange is obviously the underdog. Moxley's thinking at a whole different level, a whole more vicious level. You expect him to win. He probably will win. I think we know that. That's fine. But Orange has beaten him before. Orange did the most talking up of himself he's ever going to do. And now he's going to fight Wheeler. And there's obviously a personal story there. And then it looks like it's over. And I was actually watching this segment with someone who sometimes in this chat, Stump the Bump winner, Scott Gatta. I did see him last night. If he's in the chat now, hello. If he watches later, good to see you, buddy. And I was up in a spot where the Darby thing happened where I couldn't really see him. So he jumps off and the place goes nuts. And he's got that pink mask on. And here we go. But then they take Darby to the back. And Darby gets in the truck. And Yuta's not in it. And they do a beautiful looking spot of Claudio using the swing, which is a super babyface fun move. And he turned it absolutely vicious by swinging Darby into the garage door. Seen him do it into barricades before. This was brutal. Wheeler jumps in. They're out of there. And I go, oh boy, are we getting Darby and Claudio? And we are. Next week. One of those matches that if I thought about more, like, oh God, I definitely want to see that. It's such a perfect matchup. And they've only been in the ring twice before. They were in like a number one, I think they were in Royal Rampage together. I don't remember if they interacted. And they obviously had the tag match last week or recently, whatever it was. But those two one-on-one. Oof. Think of all of Claudio's strength and athleticism and everything he can do. And think of how Darby bounces around like a pinball when he gets bumped. Oh, it's going to be so good. Good angle, though. Needed to add to the talking. You keep Darby while he's not getting the title shot. It's and he talked about this, when he made that open challenge for Wrestle Dream. I I too often have fought fights that I probably shouldn't have fought, but I couldn't help myself. That's his mentality, for better or for worse. That's what we've learned with Darby. He's going to go in head first, whether he's going against 1 or 5. He's got to get something back. He tried. Next week, it's him and Claudio. Set up Jericho Ishii. Okay. Britt Baker and Penelope Ford. Pretty, standard Britt win. And Trina Deeb comes out, and we're going to set that up. Not over yet. Okay. The Mina Shirakawa, Harley Cameron interaction with Renee. I can't do it because I don't have their looks, but the double shaking, the double chest shaking, and Renee stopping it was exactly the level of ridiculous that should be in a wrestling show. And the crowd enjoyed watching that. Swerve and Leo, you'd expect them to have a very good match. I think this is the difference, whether you like it or not, in AEW versus WWE. Despite there being in clear advantage in terms of resume or perception, Swerve's a world champ. Leo Rush is not. You knew Swerve was going to win. But they're going to have a good match first. I don't know if people like that. I don't know if you're tuning in going, I know who's going to win. I do. That's me. Leo's not a pushover. He's just hasn't been a world champion like Swerve has. But they had a damn good match, and the crowd enjoyed it. Once again, I don't know how this came off on TV, but this crowd liked being there. They liked the stuff they were supposed to like. 2 things, though. As I said earlier with Hangman, and it felt like the presence of Mox was appreciated. That's the best way I would put it. People were happy to see him. Swerve wins. Bring out Bobby. Shelton makes the blindside attack. They take out Nana. They beat him. Here's what I really liked about that. Bobby's the centerpiece, right? You know that. When you have a faction, there's usually a top guy or top girl, whatever. And if there's others in the faction that you can clearly see a difference in, they're there to usually eat the punches from the baby face if it's a heel group, which is typically what these are, and take the bumps and maybe take the pins and 6-mans and tags or whatever it might be. So the main event caliber man or woman in the faction doesn't have to take those losses. Yes, Shelton Benjamin lost to Swerve a couple of weeks ago. It was 1-on-1. It was clean. That's fine. But in every other, and not to say he was presented weakly in that match, but every other time we've seen Shelton Benjamin in AEW, it doesn't even feel like there's a hint of the guy we saw in WWE in terms of how he was presented. Sure, Shelton got some babyface pushes as a great athlete. He beat Triple H and won the Intercontinental title from Jericho. But that was more like, man, he's a great athlete. He was in the tag team for Kurt Angle. It was Kurt's show. Not that they were presented badly. Certainly not. But they took the bumps from Brock. It feels like this is the first time. And I don't even know if he really got this treatment when he was in the original Hurt Business, that Shelton Benjamin is being presented as the killer he absolutely is. It didn't look like he was a second to Bobby, even if, Bobby's the one who was the world champion multiple times over, and Shelton, it doesn't feel like that. even MVP, who's not going to be, I don't think, an active wrestler. There's a viciousness to him. Oh, cool, I'll take out the manager, who I'm bigger than. They are letting who Shelton is shine. And it shows you that age can be overrated. It also shows you that previous underwhelming or bad booking can be overcome. The fresh, I don't even want to call it coat of paint, the fresh start for the former Hurt Business, now Hurt Syndicate, has been fantastic. And a big reason why is because of how Shelton is being treated. He's being treated as a danger. It's not just the Bobby Lashley show. Okay, got asked about this when I interviewed Jamie Hayter. That gets interrupted, lights out, whatever. A couple people asked about the Julia Hart vignette. This is the second one they've done. This is top tier shit. I didn't have much of an opinion on Julia Hart for a while. Oh, she's the cheerleader for the Griff Garrison Varsity Blondes, whatever. And then started to see a little more, and then she ends up in the House of Black. And they give her the big entrance. And she has gone... If you judged her off of being a cheerleader, and maybe I did that a little bit, you didn't give her a fair shake. There is a commitment that she brings to what she was doing in House of Black, but there's also such an obvious commitment to what she's doing now, where there seems to be some kind of wrestling within herself of, is she dark or is she going back to that? And, you know, there's the phone call and Brody's telling her to come home and then somebody else telling her to wake up and hey, horror movie stuff's big. She's hitting a home run with it. There is a lot of range in what she does. And I'm not making this comparison because they both did cheerleader stuff and they both had a skirt on and they both were very bubbly when we first saw them. I compare her to Alexa Bliss, not because of those things. I compare her to Alexa Bliss because you're seeing how an initial gimmick is not the full story. And sometimes you just make the most of the situation until you have more to bite your teeth into. Alexa did that. She outgrew, Murphy and them. She became her own thing. She's a great actress. I've always said that. She's been able to make them. She emotes well, all that stuff. She did the Wyatt stuff. Maybe she'll come back to that. Just really good at her job. And I see that now, and you could see the evolution of Alexa and how much she put into it. And I see similar traits in Julia Hart. And that's a huge compliment. I think Alexa Bliss is a hell of a character and a hell of a performer. She very much overcomes the fact that she does not have much size. She's a shit stirrer when she needs to be. She can be dark. She can act. She can be fun. You name it, she can do it. And we're starting to see a lot more. Not starting to. We have seen a lot of that range of Julia Hart. So the effort that they are putting into these vignettes, and I tweeted whoever, I think I reposted it or something. I don't know if this person works for AEW or is, a consultant or a freelancer. Somebody's working with her and them on this. And you can see that it's paying off. I think Julia Hart could be massive. And I think they really have something in her. Good character work. The four-way, really well-worked tag match. I wasn't really sure who was going to go down. I'm a big Brody King fan. Which, by the way, I saw the guy for like 20 minutes, and he was busy, and I should have. I've never talked to him, and I'm sure I'll see him again soon. But, damn, he's good. Man, he jumps off the page. I mean, all four of those guys are really good, but Brody King is. Listen, I pitched all that stuff with him and Darby at Wrestle Dream. I think he's money. I think a lot of people see that in him. I think he comes across that way. The C2 had a great run. We found out that's starting up right before Thanksgiving. Great. I love the C2. I love those round robin. I was always a big G1 guy. It worked last year. Eddie winning over Dan. I mean, should be loaded up again. But cool. Get them in there. What an interesting 3 teams so far. Private Party, House of Black, and the Outrunners. Give me that House of Black Outrunners face-off. What's that going to look like? And then they tape Rampage, and I'm not going to talk about that because I'm not going to pull the show. It's fun. I was thinking of this as I walked down because I know there'll be comments. Oh, how many people were there? They had a good crowd. I do have to remind you, what WWE's done over the last year has not been the norm in wrestling in 25 years. Thrilled that they're selling those seats and making that money and people are getting paid. But I remember before I worked there, hating when people took pictures. Like there was this weird celebration of empty seats and showing them. I remember those SmackDown tapings where look at all this tarped off. Like people like took weird joy in it. But like towards the wrestlers, you're like, well, that shows you what the booking's like. Okay, that's fine. I guess. But there's this like joy. Like, look at all these empty seats. Great job. Like, there used to be joy in rooting against WWE. Some people still have that joy. And I think people have this weird joy against rooting for AEW. I had conversations with people there last night. I said, I think I'm pretty fair. And somebody very high up said, you're extremely fair. Extremely fair. And that person told me, if you weren't, I would tell you. Which I appreciated. I've known this person for a bit. Hey, you're extremely fair. And I said, yeah. And I noticed that people who aren't and just say random shit and play to people who want a specific narrative, whether it's true or not, they get a lot of attention. And I told that person, I said, I won't fake that. I won't push a narrative because it's going to get me more clicks. I won't. I don't. I have too much pride. I have too much. I think I've built up trust over my career that I'm not going to be that person. And if that cost me some YouTube dollars, oh well. It's not who I am. It's not where I got to. It's not what's going to get me to whatever's next in my life. And guess what? They're well aware that people will fire up their camera and their microphone and put in a caption that's going to get people to click, and they'll play into that. And that's people who work there. Not that, look, nobody's perfect. There's always things you can pick apart and whatever. And listen, they're all trying to work hard. I believe that everywhere. Everybody wants to put on a good show. I don't think anybody right now in either of the two major companies is mailing it in. I watched that last night. I watched that for 5 years in WWE. I know what's still going on there. Nobody's trying. There's going to be off nights. It happens. Happens to everybody. But this like narrative of lack of care and It's a false. It's people just trying to make it, like adding on, trying to make it worse. And I do not get it. I don't get living your life that way where you're tuning in to go, yeah, I hate it. I hate it too. And I see people make these awful memes and just tired jokes. I see that stuff, and I probably shouldn't be surprised about how things turned out recently. I don't know. I like wrestling. I don't want to root against it ever. I don't want to take any kind of joy when things aren't going well or because of here's an empty section or whatever, ratings. There's been this like cyclical nature of that. It's cool to hate on WWE. AEW's great. WWE's great. It's cool to hate on AEW. I don't get it. This like hate watching or they don't watch and then they just watch the clips and then they jump on it right away. I saw somebody do it this morning, like came on to tweet to take a shot because they knew they would get clicks. I don't know. I don't want to turn on this and then just complain. A lot of the times, sake for complaining, or hey, this will click well, so I'm gonna ride this argument into the ground. The TV deal. The amount of people, supposedly smart people, supposedly people who should have the right experience to talk about this stuff, just making videos to play into the latest news. It's not going to happen. Oh, it's BS. But knowing full well that those negotiations take a lot of time. That news leaks from them. You think a billionaire is going to talk up the excitement of a deal like that? And then it's not going to happen? In hindsight, think about how stupid that sounds. Tony talking up, we're getting close. Was he lying? Nope. Does it take time? Hell yeah. It's a 9-figure deal. 9-figure deal he was negotiating. And of course he's going to get pressed on it. Sometimes he gave answers. Sometimes he didn't. People hung on every word he said and got on here and made their content about it. And a lot of them had their minds made up. Regardless of what the news was, they would find an angle to, well, no, this is actually happening. Or this is, and so many of them were wrong. And guess what? I bet a lot of them knew they were going to be wrong. I have seen people on pick your side of news stations say something, make an argument just because they're on TV, knowing that when the cameras are off, they don't believe in what they said. And people make money doing that. And it's amazing is that people, pundits in sports or news or wrestling, can be so obviously wrong and obviously peddling some narrative. And then when it's over and that news cycle has run its course, they move on from it They don't say they were wrong. They don't walk it back. Then they just wait for the next thing that they can jump on. Unfortunately, I think that's a lot of how things go right now in sports, in politics, in wrestling. They are opinions created to build an audience, not building an audience based on your own opinion. And I'm never going to be that. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to, I don't get it. There's enough crap in the world. Who the hell needs to argue about wrestling and make a point to shit on stuff that if they don't like it, why do you keep coming back to it? What joy are you taking out of that? Like I said, I don't like watching wrestling companies struggle when it's affecting maybe the bottom line of what people make or their living. Not everybody's making big money. It is important to see these companies make money so that everybody is comfortable in making money. And they're not counting seats. And believe me, it is a staple of pro wrestling. How's the house? What does it look like? What are we making tonight? I go back to what we talked about at the beginning. A guaranteed money changed a lot of things. It has changed contract structures and all the stuff that how people are paid now. It's like the NFL, Dak Prescott. Say what you will about him as a talent, whatever. But him getting a guaranteed amount of money last year is what is probably allowing him and his family to breathe easier now that he's likely out for the season and would have been going into free agency. And would have had to prove himself, and somebody would have paid him. But to get that money, because that's what the market says. In a world that's very physical, and I'm talking about football, American football, could be talking about pro wrestling. It's nice to lay your head on the pillow and know, hey, that check's coming in 2 weeks. And I'm going to be okay. That's why you should root for wrestling to do well. I'm not saying you have to like everything in creative. I'm not saying, but for the people that haven't gotten messed up in sexual assault allegations or any of this bad stuff, there are people that get affected by that didn't have anything to do with it. A lot of money was spent to cover things up or not cover things up, to settle. And guess what? There's a trickle-down effect when that kind of money gets spent. Because then it's got to be saved somewhere else. Root for the wrestling companies. I'm not saying you got to watch them all. I'm not saying you got to like it all. But good God, be better than to root against them and point out the shortcomings of a business that can go up and down. The vitriol that exists sometimes for that stuff is not the same vitriol that exists for really bad stuff in wrestling. Or, save that for the allegations that are out there about Vince or whoever. Like, that's where that stuff exists. Not YouTube about ratings and seats and pictures making people look dumb with fireflies. Ugh. And I know what? I'm talking to people here in the chat that I like talking to because you're not like that. And there's an understanding there. Anyway, let's get a couple of questions here. Nerdy Dude. Here we go. Here's €5 for you, Matt. Please do the chest shake. You're talking about Harley Cameron and Mina Shirakawa. I believe they did this. And then Renee was like, whoa! And I was like, Renee, you stop short. I just danced for euros. I don't know what that makes me. But thank you, Nerdy Dude, as always. Let's see. A couple reading. Dennis says, that's what I like. You will call out our legitimate issue, but seem to prefer enjoying the good over reveling in the bad. There's enough bad, real bad stuff in the world that I can't revel in bad wrestling stuff. Dennis says, rough the 2 guaranteed quarterback contracts blew up in teams' faces, which I think might make it harder for the, that's sports. Nerdy Dude says, speaking of NFL, Matt, thoughts on Gable Stevenson in WWE? You want to talk about an absolute waste of money and resources? That was Gable Stevenson. You find me somebody who's going to praise that guy who worked with him. It's going to take you a while. He had the charisma of this table. And that's being mean to the table. He somehow didn't put it together. Not everybody's Kurt Angle. Totally get that. But it just seemed like he picked up nothing. Like he just didn't pick up what it was. And go, Matt, watch that. Nerdy Dude just brought up Corbin. Watch that match. They cheer for forever heel Baron Corbin. That's how badly Gable Stevenson was properly rejected. Have you ever seen that before? They put a guy on a takeover, or whatever the hell it was called. And he was so bad, that was it. Like, my first thought was like Mordecai. But even then, I'm like, they didn't spend that kind of, I hope they didn't, on Mordecai. Like, Gable Stevenson got like, leave Michigan. Don't go do the Olympics. Be a wrestler. And he didn't have it. The closest thing he had to any kind of success was doing the milk truck with Kurt. That's it. I never talked to Corbin, Tom, as he has now changed his name to on his social media, about Stevenson. I'd love to one day. Also, go look up the allegations against him in Minnesota. I got nothing good to say about that guy, and not many people do. And then he goes to the Bills, and that washes out. Now he's going to go back to Minnesota and wrestle. Good luck, dude. You wasted a lot of people's time and money. See ya. Dennis says, with AEW cards being announced further out instead of dropping the day of, do you think we will at least get the full C2 lineup next week? I would hope so. I don't know, though. Reading, Pennsylvania next week, everybody. I don't know. So I guess what? It's the week after, right? I would hope so. I would think so. Nerdy Dude says, can you maybe bring Corbin on the show? I would like to. I have an idea of what I would like to do. I would like to. I'll just leave it there. We'll see if it's possible. If I can make it work for all parties involved, I would like to bring him on. I like him a lot. I always got along with him. I think he's somebody who got accepted after some of their great work. Yeah, we'll see if we can make that happen. I really would like to make it happen. Get some KC Chiefs chat if you get them on. Oh, we've talked Chiefs before. We will talk more about them. But tomorrow, keep an eye out. I may have to go early tomorrow. And by early, I mean go at 10 a.m. Eastern. I think that'll be the case. So for the members, you'll get the show at 10 a.m. Eastern. Everybody else will get it 5 p.m. Eastern, wherever you get your podcast. But we're going to do another edition, as I think we'll try to make a Friday staple of the most interesting people in pro wrestling. What are your nominations? Who did you watch this week and say, man, she made me interested? He made me pay more attention. As I said, it's about the ebbs and flows of where their stories are. I have some names that are already in my head. I have one from last night who I think was barely on the show. I will talk about that person. I have at least one name for Raw. There's an NXT name or two. Most interesting people in pro wrestling for the week. Coming your way tomorrow. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe, please. Go to thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Subscribe. You won't miss anything. Go back and watch past episodes, shorts, whatever it may be. And if you want to be live every morning, every weekday, become a member at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Next week, NXT prospect rankings coming out for the members. But for those of you who are here live today, thank you very much. Thanks for being with me. Go watch Dynamite. Go to a wrestling show if you can, if it's feasible for you, if you can afford it. Go to one, whatever it might be. You will have a good time. You will. The live wrestling experience. And I will say this about AEW, one more thing. It is not a slog of a TV taping, with the down, like, you're not bored. They keep it moving. Even when there's commercials and stuff, they keep it moving. Justin Roberts, whoever it might be, they keep you moving, they keep you engaged. And it sounds like, based on an interview Mike Mansuri did, and congrats to him on the birth of his child, it sounds like they're trying to add more engagement with the fans for the live crowds. Dennis says, hit up your local indie, cheap tickets and really fun to bring your kids to depending on the indie. Yeah, there are a lot of really good ones. Our great friend Tom Green, he's an Indiana guy. He goes to, I think it's Knapp Pro Wrestling. I've heard a lot of great things about that. Some are more family-friendly than others. There's no doubt about that. But it is a fun time, and indie shows are so intimate, and you really can get in the reaction. And you'll get good wrestlers, because on indie shows, you have to go in with the mentality of, I am seeing people for the first time tonight. They don't know who I am. I got to get who I am over. I think a good heel always has a great time at an indie show, especially with the kids. There's so many easy things to do. Also, go look up Chuck Taylor being mean to kids on YouTube when the show was over. Shout out to Chuck. Saw him last night. Doing great work at AEW. All right, I will be back tomorrow for the most interesting people in pro wrestling for this week. And I'll talk about, you guessed it, wrestling even more. Thanks for joining me today. Go to ProWrestlingTees.com/TheWrestlingMat for your mat merch. And I'll be back tomorrow right here on the Wrestling Mat.